This issue of Video Fashion Style is a fashion fairy tale. We look at designer collections with enchanting style that bring fantasies to life. In New York, the museum at FIT stages an exhibition showcasing magical, storybook-inspired fashion from designers around the world.
I've wanted to include a lot of fairy tale characters, but I've also used clothing to illustrate a concept, like the idea of the rose as a symbol of love.
Disney villains come to life at the Blondes.
We've got a lot of different characters being represented, like Maleficent and Ursula, and the Wicked Queen from Snow White.
Step into Inez de Santos' patisserie for her fanciful bridal confections, while Alice and Olivia designer Stacey Bennett transports us into her fantastically stylish world.
The whole theme is Fantasia, and I wanted it to feel like this dark, sexy, mysterious walk through a forest.
Witches take flight on the runway at London Fashion Week.
The pagan tradition was about the earth and nature, and actually it was more romantic than dark.
Plus, the late great Alexander McQueen delivers a fashion fantasy you won't want to miss. It's all next on Video Fashion Style. New York's museum at FIT ventured into the woods for their enchanting exhibition, Fairy Tale Fashion. The exhibit showcased the magical runway concoctions of designers like Alexander McQueen and Marchesa. Beloved stories, from Sleeping Beauty to Snow White, came to life in the museum's galleries.
I really love fairy tales. They had been a subject of fascination for me really throughout my entire life. I really began my work by reading some of the early written versions of tales by people like Charles Perrault, who wrote the version of Cinderella that includes the glass slipper, also the Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, and I noticed early on that a lot of these tales have these important references to fashion, even if they're kind of vague, like a gold dress covered in jewels. So I started pulling those ideas out of the tales and thinking, how would I illustrate these using actual fashion objects? I've wanted to include a lot of fairy tale characters, but I've also in some cases used clothing to illustrate a concept, like the idea of the rose as a symbol of love, which works its way into numerous tales. One of the tales I've included is Little Red Riding Hood. We have an example of a red woolen cloak with a hood from the late 18th century, and those were actually fashionable outer garments worn by women during the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The Altuzarra Red Riding Hood is spectacular. I had only seen that piece from the front in runway images, but when it arrived, it's all embellished with Swarovski crystals, and it has this gorgeous long train, and it's really the ultimate high fashion example of the Red Riding Hood. The sea covers two tales, The Little Mermaid, which is the Hans Christian Andersen tale that we're all familiar with, and also a somewhat lesser known tale called The Swan Maidens. I think particularly in the fashion world, the idea of a mermaid gown has been so important. So I have examples by Charles James. I also have a brand new example by Rodarte, which you see behind me. In Andersen's tale, the Little Mermaid is so fascinated with the human world, and her grandmother says, well, do you realize that your most beautiful asset underwater, your tail, is considered disgusting by humans? And I found that really fascinating because there are so many mermaid dresses in fashion. We clearly don't find mermaids disgusting. Alice in Wonderland is really fascinating of all fairy tales because when it was originally published, it included these gorgeous illustrations by John Tenniel. So I've included a waistcoat that actually has some of those illustrations woven into its pattern, and also included numerous motifs. There's this kind of iconography of Wonderland that includes things like little golden keys and playing cards and pocket watches, and once those things all come together, they definitely read as Wonderland. What I love about Cinderella is it's truly the ultimate rags to riches tale. I've included 4 sort of rag-style dresses, but they're all high fashion. They're all really beautiful. We perceive this kind of ragged clothing very differently today. I've also, for her ball gowns, included a gorgeous gold couture dress by Christian Dior and a really beautiful silver 18th century inspired ensemble by Vivienne Westwood. I've represented Snow White in a really beautiful hand-painted Dolce & Gabbana gown. It's hand-painted with white roses. And the Tom Brown pieces represent rose red. It's this gorgeous suit that has this applique of red roses. And my very favorite is a man's suit by Tom Brown that includes a bear-shaped headpiece by Stephen Jones. So the tale shows this transformation. A prince is turned into a bear, and then he, at the end, goes back to being a prince. I was particularly excited about The Wizard of Oz because reading the novelette shows that Dorothy was actually really obsessed with fashion. She changes into her crisp blue and white gingham dress before she heads on her journey to Oz. She gets a new green dress in the Emerald City. She's obsessed by her silver shoes, which of course are represented as red ruby slippers in the film. But there's this real preoccupation with fashion that was fun to trace. Fashion and fantasy is a really fantastic contrast to a lot of what we're seeing today, which is an emphasis on globalism and functionalism and technology, all of which are hugely important. Of course, we all need clothing that we can wear day to day, but I think having something in contrast to that shows up so well on the runway and really awes people in fashion editorials is incredibly important.
This is going to be the first time Disney Villains introduces their new brand, which is Disney Villains. And we got the opportunity to translate that for New York Fashion Week and make a runway show out of this incredible theme. I mean, we've been inspired by the villains since we were kids, and like it's this full circle moment, really.
We're at the Blondes, and the whole collection has been inspired by classic Disney villains. So we've got a lot of different characters being represented, like Maleficent and Ursula, and the Wicked Queen from Snow White.
Tonight you're going to see lots of entrances, lots of finale looks, the whole entire show. You're going to get to see that magical finale look every exit, so I think you have a lot to look at, a lot to see.
We were looking for someone who really had an authentic connection to the content and really embraced what our Disney villains represent. And the Blondes were really our first choice. They have such a beautiful approach to powerful, compelling, dynamic design. I think that they bring glamour to everything that they do. And that's what we see in our villains, in the Disney villains. And it just seemed like such a beautiful partnership.
I'm super excited. I mean, they've been friends for years, so it's actually cool that they're finally doing menswear and actually finally model for them is like super dope. Dr. Facilier, the Disney character from The Princess and the Frog. First one ever walking. I've always sat and I've always went to their shows. It's the first time I'm ever walking it, so I'm like super excited.
We also collaborate a lot with amazing people like Majesty Black, Creepy Yeehaw, Planet Eye, Heart of Bone for jewelry, Christian Louboutin, because, I mean, how could you not?
The last cherry on the cake is the fingernails. We work with C&D, and they create the most incredibly intricate, small, they're like little works of art, and it really does help to complete the story of every look.
Just how amazing their style is, like how they have the coolest wardrobe. It's so the Blondes, you know, and their personalities, over the top, totally incredible. She's a total villain.
She's a fashion villain. Yeah. She's not a wallflower. She likes to be in the spotlight. You know, all of our clients are sort of like that, whether they're public or private. They all want something special, unusual. We do everything from head to toe. It's always custom made for that individual.
The Blondes are an amazing, amazing brand, and they're amazing, amazing people. I'm very happy that I get to sit here on the front line watching all of this amazing work. Believe it or not, I used to work for the Blondes back in the day when I was like younger, 19, and now I get to sit up here and just be so happy that I used to look up to them and still look up to them. So yeah.
I wore the Blondes at my Stephen Meisel shoot. I wore the Blondes at Gay Pride. I wore the Blondes to go out for a party. There's so much depth in all of their designs. You know, it's like I can't stop staring at them. They're amazing.
We love the element that all these villains have when they walk into a room. They have this element of smoke and flame. So we incorporated feathers, hand-tied individual feathers to almost the entire collection.
There's lots of interesting special effects like that, but the newest thing we tried this season was to make something practical and something that almost anyone can get a piece of. We collaborated with a company called Lauren Moshi. We work with Disney and Lauren Moshi to create these amazing glam artworks that are crystalled and then applied to things like hoodies and tanks and t-shirts, and they're all going to be available at either, I believe, Nordstrom or in Lauren Moshi stores and online. So that's our retail activation that is inspired by what you'll see tonight.
I imagine I was in Paris and I wanted to bring you to my patisserie. It's because I was inspired by Paris, by sweets. Imagine to see the shiny floors, the cup of coffee, the beautiful cases, and that what really inspired.
Oh, I loved it. The whole confection story was really fantastic that Inez de Santos did. She had a lot more wearable looks this season, a little fuller skirts, not everything so see-through, and layers of fabric but still effortless.
And then in my cases, I have this confection, and when you open the cases, you see those beautiful gowns. Can you imagine how fun it is when we have to choose those gowns?
Models during the finale are wearing faux dessert headpieces on headbands. All of the colors are really soft pastels, lavender, pinks, very, very light yellow, mint green, and light blue, and covered in light velvet with the faux desserts on top.
I think everybody and any place on the world you can wear these gowns. They are all my babies. For me, they are all beautiful.
She's definitely fantastical. She's definitely strong, and this season I've called her the strong female protagonist. The whole theme is Fantasia, and I wanted it to feel like this sort of dark, sexy, mysterious walk through a forest. Maybe it's having 3 young girls that I come up with these things. I wanted the clothes to be a little more evocative this season. And the past few seasons have been about like print and floral and femininity, and I was like, no, this is about strength and power and evoking a sense of just mystery, right? The silhouettes are a lot of like just shorter, sexier, more fitted kind of pieces, and a lot of like beading and embroidery, sequins, sparkle, metallics, velvets. It's really lush. Can't wait to be the Snow Queen and the Rose Queen, like those full looks with like the white puffer and the feather skirt and the white top, and then also the like that Bordeaux like pleated skirt. I'm like a big skirt girl, so. Months of work, but I always feel like fashion is a fairy tale, and fashion is supposed to tell a story, and runways to me don't tell a story. Like my sets and all of this, like creating installations like this, allow for people to really like feel like they're a part of the world, and the clothes are part of a world versus just being clothes.
We started off looking at witchcraft. It was very much a part of our lives growing up on a small island in the north of England, which seems weird, but there were lots of witches around. You know, we'd go to a witch like some people go to doctors. And so that interested us, and the portrayal of witches as being very dark, but really we think of them more medicinal and more to do with the earth. So we looked at pagan.
Yeah, so the pagan tradition very much was about the earth and nature, and actually it was more romantic than dark, and so that was the main element we wanted to get across with the collection. Also, because we like to have opposite elements to the collection, we looked at subcultures in society as well. So we looked at skinhead and suede head and goth, but goth led us more to the Tokyo pastel goths, which was all very pretty feminine colours, so it was just like taking references from that. There's a lot.
We've got like velvet devores and silk satin devores, lots of silk georgettes and silk chiffons layered up and frayed for lightness.
We've got sequins, we've got tailoring, there's tules, and then there's lots of like embroidery and beading as well.
You know, it was very witchy, and I can get into any kind of extreme theme like that. So there was a lot of black, which a lot of fashion people really like, but it was kind of in a crazy, fun way, and I really loved the sparkly pieces and the sheer pieces with ruffles. So it was cuckoo crazy, but at the same time, still had a lot of the trends that women love and want to wear.
I've come to the Preen show because I work with Preen line quite a lot. I'm wearing one of their dresses. I'm excited to see the collection. I'm a big fan. I'm a dress girl because I hate faff, so I hate the idea of having to think what to wear. So they're mainly dresses, and I just think that their designs, the fit, everything is right up my street.
I had a really long, like, black dress that was kind of low, and they put flowers all over my chest and arms, and it was beautiful. It was so cool. It was a good mix between witchy and kind of like pretty.
I think she's kind of quite an independent spirit, quite original, knows her own mind.
She's kind of like a modern woman, you know. The modern woman needs many things in her life, and she lives a busy life. So one minute she's at a party, the next minute she's in the boardroom, the next minute she's with the kids at the weekend. So it's kind of like the modern woman doesn't want one look, she doesn't want one style. She wants to have interesting things for her life. I think that we are darkly romantic.
In one of his most spectacular shows, Alexander McQueen delivered a regal fashion fantasy inspired by Queen Victoria and the British Empire.
I just went backstage to see McQueen, and it's very romantic. It's moved away from, sometimes a rather dour route that Alexander can take, and it really looked great. He's got the girl that lived in the tree, or some romantic fairy tale that he's concocted in his head, but the girls look ravishing, incredible jewelry. I mean, if ever there was a season for jewelry, this is the season for jewelry from the Gem Palace for Alexander, but just remarkable.
It's really what he does best, is to take these ideas, this historic theatrical ideas, and present a show that's almost, well, it is theater. And he does it to such an exquisite extreme. All the regal and the different eras and different, 17th century, 18th century Spanish influences. He'll take one idea and he'll show you like 50 ways to do it. I mean, the jewels were stunning. The colors, the fabrics over the white tulle, all the passementerie on all the little bodices, on the gowns. It was like the Tudors, it was Fantasyland. It was really beautiful.
You have to understand Alexander McQueen and sort of where he comes from, and you see real drama and the real theatrics of fashion that he's so great at putting on the runway, but at the same time, there are really great quality clothes there. He cuts a pantsuit like no one else. There's beautiful dresses, tailored jackets, and he's really a craftsman behind all that.
He's an extraordinary tailor. It comes through, his experience on Savile Row comes through always, and so he's got sort of the chops to back up all the flash.
These are extraordinary pieces, and with his clothes and his interpretation and his way of deconstructing, it all looks incredibly contemporary, and that's very hard to do. And it's still extraordinarily rich, but not in the vulgar way. It's such a hard thing to pull off, and he does it. And this time, I thought, it just took your breath away.
What's so extraordinary about Lee is that I don't know that he's actually changed. I think what he has done is stayed true to himself, not given in to the critics and the judges. He's remained an artist and someone who actually, excuse the expression, doesn't give a bleep about what the trend is, what's happening. He really does what he wants to do while creating magnificent, extreme quality clothing that really deserves a lot of applause for the balls that he's had to do what he's done.
I mean, this is why I come to Paris, to see shows like that.
Beautiful, gorgeous, magnificent, really a tour de force for Alexander McQueen.
When he's on form, there's nobody better.
These designers show that the runway is more than just a stage on which to show clothing. It's a place to dream.